Hi, and welcome to this edition of the Live and Invest Overseas podcast. I'm Kat Kalashian. I am the Live and Invest Overseas Europe editor based here in Paris. And today I want to talk about what I call location chemistry. But really, what that means is how to fall in love with the place that you want to live. I have this grand theory that falling in love with a place is much the same as falling in love with a person, that you'll go through kind of all the same growing pains that you have in any normal relationship, that you need to get used to one another before you know if it'll work long term, and that no matter what, there are going to be hard times, and that sometimes you've got to give up and bail out, and sometimes you've just got to get through the hard times and see where they lead you. So today we're here to talk about how to find, out of all of these wonderful countries in the world, how to find the place that might suit you best, and how to deal with the relationship that you'll have as you get to know that place a little bit better. So let's base this metaphor first on love at first sight. And I'll say that the first impression that you have of any place, your first gut reaction, should be very much taken to heart, in the same way that when you meet a new friend or a potential spouse or potential boyfriend, girlfriend, no matter what, there's chemistry involved. You know immediately if you're drawn to someone, if you like someone, if talking to them feels easy and natural. And it doesn't always. With some people, it just doesn't come as easily, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that you guys don't jive in the same way that you and some other people do. And I posit that same theory holds through with locations. That when you get off of a plane or step out of the airport, you often have this very visceral first reaction to something. And for me, I've given the example of falling in love with a place based on the smell. When I got off the plane, there was this, kind of intoxicating scent of exoticism and something new. In Nicaragua, it's based on all the hardwood. I get off of the plane in Nicaragua and all I smell is wood, and it's so lovely and comforting. In Kenya, I don't even know what I would say that the smell was, but it was so alluring that it was one of those things that just hits you right away. It hooks you and you can't let go. So whatever it is about your first impression of a place, don't dismiss it out of hand, and don't like convince yourself that it could have been wrong, that you might have judged too quickly. Take that to heart. And although you should never judge a book by its cover, and of course you shouldn't be closed-minded about anything based on a first impression, always remember that first impression that you had, because I think it says a lot about the relationship that you might end up having with that place down the line. So when it comes to finding the place that you might want to spend the rest of your life, or at least a few years in the interim, do base it on your first impression. And so based on that alone, think back to where your favorite vacations were. Do you have a best vacation ever in your head? Was Mexico the best place you have ever been in your life to this day? Your favorite place to have been? Is it Paris? Or do you like a variety of destinations all around the Caribbean or around the Mediterranean, or around Europe? Whatever your lifestyle preference is, you might already know of several places that you've been that you really love it. So think back to those places, make a list of those really special destinations that you remember so fondly to this day, whether you were there 20 years ago or last year. Make a list of those places. If that doesn't work for you, if you maybe haven't ever enjoyed a vacation, if you haven't traveled very much outside of North America, if you don't really have a frame of reference already for what you think your ideal lifestyle overseas might be, then the next best thing is to picture what it is that you want to see every day when you wake up and open your curtains, or walk out your door. Is it a city that you see every day out your windows? Is it the beach? Is it mountains? Is it lots of land in front of you and no other people or houses or cars? Whatever it is that you have, whatever setting that seems like your ideal setting that you would live in if you could have any option in the world, take that as your first seed and let the idea grow from there. So, if that's your idea, then for example, your idea of a perfect setting is cities, start making a list of some cities that either you've been to or you're interested in going to, or that just look interesting, and start your research there. All right, so that's step number one, is making a list of some of the places the lifestyles, really, not even necessarily specific destinations, but the kind of lifestyle that you think you want, whether it's the beach or the mountain, etc. Then, of course, as we all know, though, first impressions don't always lead to a lifetime of bliss. So, unlike perhaps is wise in real life, I highly recommend playing the field when it comes to choosing your new home overseas. You don't want to get stuck too quickly and to be too committed to one place. So research other places, like that one that may have been the starter seed of this idea. If that was Mexico, then research, for example, Panama is very similar to Mexico. It's got a similar climate. It's very Americanized and has a very strong North American influence all throughout. If you've been interested in Colombia, then maybe Ecuador or Uruguay could be another place to look into. Do some research based on the criteria that you've given yourself from that first place or places, and expand where else might make sense. Because again, you don't know necessarily every place out there that might be similar to what you're looking for. And it could be that your dream destination you've never even heard of yet. So keep an open mind at this point. You're still doing your research. When you are doing that research, don't just research like a tourist. Don't go on TripAdvisor, and leave it at that. What you want to do is pay attention to things like the ease of residency, which is something that we talk about here at Live and Invest Overseas. Not all publications are going to talk about these things. Condé Nast or TripAdvisor or Lonely Planet. They don't talk about residency because they're geared more towards tourists. So, swing on over to liveandinvestoverseas.com and start looking into the residency options for those countries that are high on your list. Cost of living, of course, is another really important one. Do some of your own independent research, maybe reading some blogs or getting in touch with some people through Facebook who are already living there, some expats already living there, and see what their cost of living is. Again, we're a great resource for that. Go over to our website and you should be able to find, several dozen budgets, from very specific budgets for towns or cities all over the world, not just what it costs to live in Panama, because who knows what it costs to live in Panama. Living in Panama City is a very different cost from living in Santa Fe up in the mountains. So keep that in mind. Always remember that you're not thinking about a country. You're thinking about either maybe a region, but usually a city or a town. Whether you can bring pets, think about what's important to you. Do you have pets that you want to bring? Then that needs to be on your research list. Do you need internet speed to be really high because you like to watch all of the sports packages and stream 20 things at once, or do day trading, et cetera, et cetera? Make sure that the internet is fast enough for you. Could you not live without peanut butter? The list of these reasons could be as trivial or as grand as they need to be to suit your circumstance. So I've known expats who take their peanut butter very seriously. And if they move to a place where they didn't realize until they'd actually moved there that peanut butter was $15 a jar because it had to be flown in specially to the island that they're living on. And then they come back and say, well, how can you say it's affordable to live here when peanut butter costs $15? Well, you don't need to get the American imported peanut butter, obviously, but that's something that's very, very specific to you and something you need to identify in yourself before you go. And then, actively take the initiative to research that before you move and then find out that you can't afford your peanut butter habit. It could be as simple as not getting wine. If you're on an island in the Caribbean and you love French wines, that's going to cost an arm and a leg to get shipped in every month. So think about what it is. Oh, if you're a very tall person and you're moving to, say, Ecuador or Bolivia, clothes aren't made as large down there. My stepfather is a pretty tall guy, and he was unable to go shopping in Ecuador when he lost his suitcase, and he had to go to the mall just to get some clothes for the trip until the airline returned his clothes to him. He couldn't find a single thing that fit because nothing was made in his size. So test out all these things. That's what getting your boots on the ground is all about. It's discovering these things and seeing what's important to you. Our adequate healthcare facility is going to be available. That if you have a serious health issue, you're not going to want to be more than 20 minutes from a hospital, say. If you're a fairly healthy, active, or young person, that might not be as big of a concern. So again, make this very personalized list and do your own research. And then we go through what I call the dating period. So at this point, You can think about it maybe like internet dating up until now. You're just kind of clicking on some profiles, reading some about me's, clicking through some photos, seeing what appeals on a very superficial basis, and trying to dig as deeply as you can from afar. Now we're going to dig in. We're going to start dating, meeting in person. What you need to do at this point is go back to one or multiple of the places on your list. You know, if now your list has grown to 10 places, you probably can't afford to spend the time and money that it would take to go visit all of those 10 places. But hopefully you've now gotten to know yourself a little bit better in this process, and you've narrowed it down to less than 5 places, let's say. And so let's take again this Caribbean example. It's an easy one. Let's say Mexico is top of your list, but you've also, now that you've been looking into it, Panama also makes sense and might make more sense for certain reasons. So say you have those two that are really front runners. I would suggest you go and spend some time on the ground in each, but not as a tourist. So this is where the difference comes in. You want to go and you want to get, for example, an Airbnb, not a hotel. You want to stay for, I would say at least 2 weeks. If you can get more than 2 weeks, all the better. But at least 2 weeks for these reconnaissance trips, we'll call them. And again, you should be staying in an Airbnb. You should be checking out different neighborhoods. This is the way that you're going to get to know the neighborhood. You're not going to get to know it if you're living in a hotel. But if you're searching on Airbnb and comparing this neighborhood to that neighborhood, you're already educating yourself as you go. If you think a car is needed wherever you're living, then rent a car and live as if you were living there permanently as a resident while you're there on this little reconnaissance trip. You might end up finding out that you don't actually need a car. It could be an experiment. Can I get by here without a car? Is a car an expense? Is it a hassle? Is it just annoying? Can I do without one? Or if you if you think you need one, then get used to driving in the roads, get used to seeing signs in other languages. There are many, many obstacles to be learned driving overseas. So take a look at that kind of, living whatever your lifestyle would be. If it's not a car, practice taking the metro or the bus or, walking around, whatever your form of transportation will be. Cook at least a couple of meals yourself. I'm not going to say that you can't go out and eat dinner out. Of course, that's half the fun of being anywhere, whether you live there or you're touristing. But if you cook a couple of meals yourself, you're going to have to go shopping, which will lead you more quickly than any other way to realize what is different about this place than your place back home. So the way that the grocery stores are laid out. Can you get everything in one supermarket, or are you going to have to go to multiple little stores? Is there a supermarket, or do you have to go to the local market? What day is the local market? These are all things that may end up being difficulties, or at least things that you're not used to figuring out. And by forcing yourself to figure them out, you'll learn about the culture that much more. Also, if you have a favorite recipe, you might not be able to find all of those ingredients. They might look very differently. In Colombia, milk usually comes in a bag, not a bottle. So it took me, I don't know how many turns around the dairy aisle in Colombia when I first started going there. I was making myself dizzy going in circles looking for the milk because I expected it to come in a bottle. Finally, I found it in a bag. So, you've got to think outside the box a little bit and get used to the way that this country does things. You might not be able to find certain ingredients. You might realize that they cost an arm and a leg because they're not locally made, etc. So again, just another lesson in self-education if you're shopping and cooking locally. Also, do some shopping for clothes while you're at it. You don't have to go, spend $1 million. You don't even have to spend any money. Go and try some clothes on. But maybe it's a weird thing. But for example, many husbands of friends or men that I know here in Paris, expat men, complain about the underwear situation, whether it's socks, underwear, or undershirts. They don't seem to like anything that's available in France. And I've talked to, at least half a dozen men have said this exact same thing to me. They bring stuff back from the US or Canada or wherever it is because they're just not happy with the selection here. So it's the oddest thing sometimes. Go to a pharmacy, see what's on the pharmacy shelves. Just educate yourself while you're on the ground as if you were going to live there. Look at some real estate listings. You don't necessarily need to go view an apartment, but take a look, look around, see what the local rental websites are. Once you get on the ground, you'll have a better idea of how to figure that out, how to figure out which ones are the good ones, which ones are the bad ones. See what rentals are in your neighborhood versus other neighborhoods that you might have discovered and for the first time now that you're discovering them. If you're interested in purchasing, take a look at what the purchase prices are. We always, of course, recommend that you rent before you buy, no matter what your goals or intentions are. But it never hurts to know what the markets are doing in your neighborhood. So just look around and see what's available for you in your budget and in the size of apartment or house that you're looking for. Research all the costs that you would be spending. And again, these are very specific to you. So would you join a gym? How much is the local gym? Is there even a local gym? There might not be. Would you get a maid? It's very possible. And most people living overseas in most countries have maids. I'm living here in Paris. It's a very expensive city. Everyone that I know has a maid. And I'm not talking, incredibly, blue, what was it called? White collar people. I'm not talking about very, very rich, fancy, chic people having maids. But it is just the norm here to have a maid. And it's not very expensive. So whether it's once a week or once a month, most people have some household help here. Um, the cars and transport that I mentioned, look up what gas is locally. How much would your monthly or annual bus or metro ticket cost? Would you take yoga classes? I'm pretty sure most people would be taking language classes. What would those cost? Any kind of association group classes that you would think of joining, check out what the local prices would be. And above all, try and speak the language, assuming that you are moving someplace that doesn't speak your own language. Do the best you can, get the Duolingo or the Rosetta Stone and do a little bit of homework before you arrive and force yourself as much as you can to speak when you're on the ground there. Even if folks do speak English, or if it's a very touristy neighborhood or a city, or even if people are, very, very nice and say, oh, no, don't worry, you don't need to try and speak our language. Do your best, because it's just another way to get your brain into this new culture, if nothing else. But, obviously it's also polite and a good thing for you to be speaking the local language. So at this point, maybe it's been 6 months, maybe it's been a year. You've done all of this research. You've made your reconnaissance trips. Hopefully you found one place that really stands out above all the others. And when you think you found that right one, it's time to make the commitment and really take it for a true test drive. So I would spend a longer period of time there. This is if you're taking it slowly. At this point, you've done the research and you visited the different places. You could make your permanent move at this point without having, too many regrets or concerns that you would be jumping in too fast. But if you are a more conservative person, if you want to get to know the place a little more, move a little bit more slowly, you don't need to sell your car and your house and all your possessions overnight. You can do this slowly. So get another Airbnb for a month or 6 months, maybe a short-term rental for 6 months, and you rent out your home back in the US or Canada for a few months. Whatever it is, figure out how to get yourself there for a longer period of time and try and just stretch the umbilical cord a little bit more if you're a little nervous about taking the plunge. So when you are ready to make that final commitment, when you've moved in, you've done the move in phase, which is, living for a longer period of time, and you think you're pretty comfortable in this new place, then you're ready for the big commitment, which I would say is making the permanent move, which in this grand metaphor is taking the plunge into marriage. You're putting a ring on it and you want to move in. These moves always come with a honeymoon phase, and that honeymoon phase will always end. It may happen sooner or later. In the beginning, as I say this now, when you're all excited about these ideas, or if you're further along in the process and you're just dying to move to, say, Mexico again, and you think, well, there's no way I could ever get sick of living in Mexico. There's no way I would ever have any regrets. I love everything about living in this town that I'm living in. I don't believe you. You guys are full of it. There's no way I'm ever going to have that moment of panic of, what did I do? What am I doing here? Have I lost my mind? Were all those people back home who told me I was crazy to try this, were they all right? I've known someone who did say that to us. He said, there's just no way. I am so positive in my decision. I love this place so much. I've done everything right. I'm never going to have that moment of panic. Years later, he did come back to us and say, it took a lot longer than I would have thought, and that, you warned me about, but it did happen. Probably, I think it was for him after a year of living there, and I don't even know what it was that set him off, but he had one of those moments where he just thought, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. So it might take a long time to kick in. It might never kick in. For all I know, power to you. If you move in and you never have that moment of regret, then all the better for you. But I would be willing to put money on the fact that it does catch up with everyone. Even me, I've made several moves in my life. I moved from the US to Ireland to Paris, from Paris back to the US, then down to Panama, and then back over to Paris again. This most recent trip to Paris, I thought there's no way possible that I could ever have any moments of regret like that. I've been wanting to get back to Paris since I moved away more than 12 years ago. I have loved Paris ever since. I've continued to visit. I don't hate anything about this city. I love everything about the culture, the people. I say that as I'm waxing poetic right now. Of course, that's not actually true. There are plenty of things that frustrate me about living here, which I did find out within actually very quickly after moving here. Things did not go as I planned, as they rarely ever do, right? I had a plan, I had expectations, and they didn't work out that way. And I thought I have made a huge mistake. I don't even know where I would backpedal to because I wasn't moving back to Panama. But, in that moment of panic, I thought, should I move back to the States where my husband has family, where I have some family as well? Or, what am I doing here? Basically, it feels like it was a mistake. And I never, ever, ever would have thought that could have happened to me on this final trip back here. So sorry, that was a bit of a digression, but it just goes to show that it will probably catch up with you no matter what your situation is. It may catch up with you much faster than you realize if you're landing in a new country, and imagine, put yourself in your future shoes. You're speaking a new language. You're in a city that's almost completely alien to you. Hopefully you've become familiar with it over all of this research phase, but it's still an unfamiliar place. You're a stranger in a strange land. You're probably speaking another language. People do things differently here than they do back home. You don't understand it. You feel kind of lost, at sea, confused, vulnerable, which is a feeling that adults, as adults, we don't feel that so often. So it can be very off-putting. And you're also trying to put all of your roots down when you move to a new place. You're probably trying to, you have to rent an apartment. You have to get your electricity hooked up. You have to get a cell phone. You have to find cable if you want to get a TV or a phone connected. You have to have a forwarding address, maybe. You have to switch over your driver's license, maybe. There are so many things you have to do in your new home. You might even have to do bigger things like some kind of repairs. You might move into your place and, the plumbing starts leaking a week after you move in. Who knows? The residency process alone can often be intimidating. So you have all of these things to deal with, and they're often all happening in the first month to 3 months after moving in. And it can be very frustrating and overwhelming. And there's no shame in that, and in admitting it and realizing it and giving yourself a little bit of grace about it. So if you do feel, if you've only moved in 3 weeks ago and you're thinking, well, my honeymoon phase wasn't very long because I already am thinking, what the hell am I doing here? There's no shame in any of it. It's all normal, and it happens to the best of us. I would say just keep pushing forward, and it's very likely that you'll move through it. It's probably just cold feet, as they say. However, it's possible that it is just this place isn't right for you. If you're just not gelling, if you've given it the time that it takes and it's just not working, it's fine. Don't panic about the panic. Maybe you decide to just move on, and that's fine too. If the first place you end up overseas doesn't end up being the final place, the worst case scenario is that you've spent a year or however much time overseas having a crazy adventure. That's the worst case scenario. All you've wasted is your own time having a grand adventure that you'll be able to tell people about. Best case scenario, your world has now been open. Your horizons are now much wider. And maybe you decide to move on to a new country. Maybe this was just step one in a much larger adventure that you didn't see coming. Whatever it is, if it is just the cold feet, again, don't panic about the panic. Just remind yourself why you chose this place to begin with. Remind yourself of all the things that you loved about it. So if you were that person who wanted to go to Mexico, it was probably the beach that, really enticed you, or the weather. So go spend a weekend doing nothing but beachy things. I moved to Paris primarily because I love art and I love being around the museums, and this whole city is like an open air museum. when I have one of those days where I feel like France is rejecting me like a bad organ, I go out and I go to the museums and remind myself what I love about Paris. So another thing that will help combat all this is socialization. It can be very isolating when you first move to a new place. So make some friends, put yourself out there, whether it's with locals or with other expats, other Americans or Canadians or Brits, whoever it is that you end up making friends with, they'll go a long way to making you feel better when you have some of those moments. And expat friends can be great helps by commiserating with you and saying, oh, yeah, I've had that same experience. It's very frustrating. And it's just one of the things about living here, and you move on with your day. But it can be so nice. It can be invaluable to have somebody tell you, no, you're not crazy. No, we don't do it like that back home. No, I don't understand why it's that way here either. Whatever the issue is, most expats have all experienced the same things. So don't let it go too far in the negative direction. But as a support system, expats can be great. So I would say, being absolutely honest, if you get through all these growing pains, which is what they are, right? Like I said in the beginning, this is a relationship. You need to get to know how to live with a new person, how to live in a new place. So these are just growing pains. You're just getting used to this new lifestyle. But by the end of your first year, I would say, and yes, a year is a long time, but you have a lot to do in that first year. Give yourself that first year if you're having any of these thoughts. And by the end of your first year, you should have made some friends. You should have established some routines. You should be, know your way around your neighborhood, know that the way the shop lines work, speak the language a little bit better. All of these things a year in, and yes, it may take that long or longer for you to feel much more comfortable and happy on a day-to-day basis. But again, just remind yourself of those things you love about the place. So I'm not saying your whole first year is going to be miserable, but by the end of the first year, I think you'll look back to when you first arrived and say, wow, I was a different person back then. Basically, I am a whole new integrated person in my new life here. And then by the end of that first year, you'll also have finished all of that really annoying, sometimes frustrating administration. And you should be much more on your way to living a normal life in your new home. And again, if not, that's okay too. You can just move on or move back. There's no harm in it. There's no shame in it. Again, just a crazy adventure that you've had. After you've had that first year or so, though, of growing pains, I would say you've settled into the relationship and you should feel very comfortable, and you can call those the golden years. And we wrap up this metaphor with those very happy, pleasant years where you have just kind of moments of seeming dementia where you walk outside and you're just grinning like a fool because you're so happy at all the things around you, or that this really is your life, that this is the life, the reality that you're living, and you're so lucky in it. And don't forget, as a final note, that in this grand metaphor, there is no need for monogamy. I will only say that in this context. I don't want to get myself into trouble. But you can spend time in multiple places per year. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. You don't have to spend all of your months in a place if you don't like their winter season, or if you think it's too hot in the summer. Find a new place to go, or spend a few months back home if you want to. Whatever it is, there are many ways to do this. Maybe you cycle yourself around with the seasons. Maybe you decide that you only want to live in your new home for a year or two and you want to move on because as soon as you've gotten there, you've discovered other countries. It can almost be like a set of dominoes falling. You realize once you get overseas how easy it all can be once you get your head wrapped around it a little bit, and that you just want to keep the adventure going. So there you have it. The way that falling in love with a location can be exactly like falling in love with a person. Hopefully this also has helped you if you're thinking about, how do I choose a place in the world to go? How do I start narrowing down that list? How do I start researching all of these places? Again, our website, liveandinvestoverseas.com, is one of the greatest assets for research on this level of taxes and residency and healthcare and all the things that all of those other websites aren't talking about. They're talking about the food and the weather and the skiing or the beaches. We talk about those things too, but we have a lot of practicalities peppered in with those as well. Again, liveandinvestoverseas.com. Sign up for some of our newsletters if you're interested in the entire world and you don't know where to move yet. I recommend the Overseas Opportunity Letter. You'll hear about all places all over the world from people that are living there and experts on the ground there. If you're interested primarily in Europe, sign up for In Focus Europe, which is every 2 months. These are all free newsletters, so no worries, and they come to your inbox, your email, so you don't need to worry about getting any junk mail. If you happen to be interested in either Panama or Belize, we have 2 specific publications, one for Panama, In Focus Panama, one for Belize, In Focus Belize. You can sign up for each or both of them if you're interested. And keep in touch for any other exciting new free newsletters that we may be coming out with this year. Thank you for your time today, and we'll talk to you next time. Happy trails.